Next to the poignant story of a crucifix rescued from the ruins of a church in France during the First World War and brought back to Britain by an army chaplain.
Yes, Parson Percy Hewson found it in the rubble of a village destroyed during the Battle of the Somme in 1916. And it came with him when he was vicar of All Saints Church near Stamford.
But more than 100 years later, the parishioners have decided it doesn't belong here in England. Our reporter Stuart Leith has the full story.
This crucifix has been the centrepiece on the altar of All Saints Church for more than 100 years, ever since it was salvaged from the rubble of this church in France, which was destroyed in the First World War. But now these parishioners in Tinwell near Stamford want to return it to the village it came from. It was Chas McDevitt's son Jono who first suggested the idea in 2018.
I think he was pleased that his contribution had made a difference, and that what he'd said was being taken seriously by senior members of the church. And so yeah, we're really pleased that it's come to this.
The village, called Douane, is in northern France, and it was destroyed in fierce fighting during the Battle of the Somme in 1916. But the village was rebuilt with a new church. COVID delayed their plans for taking the crucifix back, but they're now aiming to return it in June.
They were over the moon because they knew they'd had a crucifix, but they'd no records left. You see, everything had gone, everything had been ruined, so they'd no record at all, but they knew they'd had a crucifix and it was missing. That was all they knew.
Ben Hewson's grandfather Percy was the army chaplain who found the cross in the rubble, brought it back with him to Britain and then served as the vicar of Tinwell.
It's great, it's fine, and I'm sure he himself would much approve and be extremely interested in all the razzmatazz around it and the people involved, because that was the sort of person he was.
George Earle is a keen amateur woodcarver, and he's made this replacement for All Saints to keep when the original goes back home to France.
I looked over the old one and decided I could just about manage it with a lot of help from my carving tutor, and then spent 72 hours carving it out of lime wood. And it was a great privilege to be able to do so.
Church vicar Olwen Woolcock had to get permission from the Diocese of Peterborough to return the crucifix, but they all feel it's the right thing to do.
We've just celebrated Easter, and Easter is the story of the resurrection, of death giving way to new life, and that's exactly what's happened in that village. It's been rebuilt, and we're taking this crucifix over, and it's a sign of that restoration, and it's a sign of that new life.
After more than a century at All Saints, this crucifix will soon be heading back to France, but they will have George's replica to remind them of this remarkable story. Stuart Leith's ITV News, Tinwell near Stamford.
Going back home where it belongs.
Yeah, we both said, what a nice end to that report, and seeing the